I built a coaching business at the age of 18, read over 247 books on psychology, all while still going to school, building up my body, and doing my A levels. And in this video, I will show you the exact system that I used to understand burnout, find out exactly which stage I'm in, and how to never burn out again. So, what even is burnout? I define burnout as mental and physical exhaustion from pushing yourself too hard for too long. And here's what happens in your nervous system, and that's exactly why your anxiety spikes. So you have a nervous system, right? Which is responsible for how your body works. And in that nervous system, you have a parasympathetic nervous system and a sympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for your fight, flight, freeze response. So basically, releasing hormones like cortisol and stress and making you anxious, right? That's where you get like physically exhausted. It's putting a lot of pressure onto you, and you're in the state when you're working very hard for a very long time. And then you have a sympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite. It's responsible for calming yourself down, right? For regulating your heartbeat, for making your body feel smooth and warm, and you feel in control and confident. And when you're constantly in the parasympathetic response, the sympathetic response doesn't get turned on. And after some time, you get really exhausted from constantly being in this stress mode that your body is manifesting physical anxiety symptoms like headaches, like lower back pain and muscle tension, and also making you extremely anxious because anxiety is a threat to your core sense of being, focused on your survival, often in the future very vague and unspecific. So you start to overthink about all these different things like what could go wrong in your job, are you really working enough, you get mental brain fog, and you're just completely exhausted. So the key here is to don't activate the fight, flight, freeze response, the parasympathetic nervous system as much, and tap more into sympathetic nervous system response because it works like a seesaw, right? So on one side you have the parasympathetic nervous system, and on the other side you have the sympathetic nervous system. And when they're in balance, you feel calm, confident, and in control. When they're out of balance, and you're constantly in one mode, like the stress mode, you start to get all of these problems, okay? And there's a simple law in physics that explains this very well. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So the key here isn't balance like other people told you to, it's having a rhythm. So you need to work like a lion, and I will tell you more about that in just a second. So you have rest on one side. When you rest too much, you feel lazy, your anxiety spikes, you feel guilt, you feel shame, right? Which leads to no productivity. If you work too much, you burn out, it leads to mental and brain fog, anxiety. So you get the same kind of reaction, which is not being productive and feeling guilty for not working or not being able to work. So when you work too much, your body forces you to rest. And when you rest too much, your body forces you to work. And your body is using anxiety and shame and guilt and all these negative emotions when you're resting too much to push you to work. And when you're working too much, it's using anxiety and burnout to get you to calm the fuck down, right? So you have to be in the middle here, in the balance, to avoid anxiety from pushing you to rest and to avoid anxiety and burnout from pushing you to work more, okay? And the first step is to understand the stages of burnout. Stage 0 is a healthy productivity zone. This is probably where most people are in because, to be honest, most people are not working that much. But if you're watching this video, you're probably an ambitious young man who's close to burnout or completely in burnout, then this is right for you. So in stage 0, you're working hard with no symptoms. You feel focused, energetic, and sleep well, and you feel in control. And this zone never lasts forever because you move through these stages over time. The longer you work and the harder you work without rest, the more you get close to stage 5. Stage 1 is a subtle warning sign. That's after like working for 1 to 3 weeks without really having a break. So you feel slight mental brain fog, emotional turbulence, and low motivation. You maybe get a mild cold or light cough, or you have poor sleep. And usually I catch myself when I'm in this stage. I realize that I'm not really feeling motivated. When I go to bed at night, I'm just thinking about work. When I wake up in the morning, I feel a bit sluggish and I have back pain. And you can ignore these symptoms. You can absolutely ignore them and push through. Okay? But when you push through the stage 1, you go to stage 2, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And you can fix stage 1 with taking a short break, taking a rest, going out on a night to, just relax or whatever. If you don't do that, you go to stage 2, and then your body starts to fight back. Here's where it starts to get a bit critical. So you have racing thoughts, anxiety, and you can't sleep deeply. You have night sweats, nausea, or maybe even a fever, and you have very low physical exhaustion and appetite loss. So you kind of just like feel off. You feel shaky, you feel weak, you have this mental brain fog, you feel anxiety, you feel overwhelmed. Nothing is really fun anymore, but you're still pushing. And it just feels wrong. It just feels hard. You're like going against your natural instincts. And the fix is just to take 3 to 7 days off and you rest hard. Stage 3 is full burnout warning sign. When you're in this stage, you really need to calm the fuck down, okay? When you push yourself to this stage, I was there like 1 year ago. I was working for like 8 weeks in total during the summer holidays, and I literally got like depersonalization, derealization. I didn't understand the world. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I don't feel like I'm a human being. I was looking at myself in the mirror and at my girlfriend, and I was like, am I even really here? Okay. I literally couldn't really sleep at night. I was numb and emotionally disconnected. I had no motivation, a lack of appetite, or I was eating way too much and I just was binging everything. I just felt shut down. And you have deep anxiety, foggy brain, and very irritable or numb symptoms. And I just had to take 1 to 2 weeks off. So like a full rest required. The next stage, you never want to go into this territory, right? You want to avoid 3, 4, and 5 at all times. 4 is a burnout explosion. You get panic attacks, your body is inflamed, you have major weight gain or weight loss, depression, night terrors. This is like your body is completely trying to tell you to not work. So you're basically like a zombie with brain fog and anxiety. And then you need a serious time off. And stage 5 is a dangerous stage and you never want to go there, which is hospitalization. So you have an extreme breakdown. You can get literally mental disorders, physical disorders. You need to get on medication. You can do permanent damage to your body and brain, and you never want to push yourself to the stage. Okay? So, how do we avoid going into stage 3, 4, and 5? How do we catch ourselves at stage 1 and 2 and return back to stage 0? That is the goal. Okay? The first thing is that you have to find your pace. Because it's normal to go from stage 0 to stage 1 to stage 2 without taking a break. Okay? And then you usually reset. So you go to stage 2 and then you reset. That is like the optimal flow. So you don't want to push yourself through here, okay? And you don't want to wait to collapse. You want to listen to your body early. You probably know which kind of symptoms you have when you start to feel burnout and anxiety. For me, it's lower back pain, tightness in my chest, not being able to sleep and overthinking everything, and not really enjoying eating or working or really anything. So you can plan this before the burnout hits. You say, okay, I'm going to work until stage 2. This is going to take me like 8 weeks. And you plan before, okay, in 8 weeks, I will take a 1 week break where I allow myself to do whatever I want to do. Okay? You can also not do this with just working for 8 hours and then resting for 1 week. You can also do this in the micro level. So you work for 8 hours a day and you take 1 hour of rest. Okay? So basically, you find your pace, because pace is a level of intensity you can sustain for decades without harming your health. That is very important. Ask yourself, how much could you work a day? In what kind of way? With which kind of people? In which kind of intensity that you can sustain it forever? For me, that's like 6, 7 hours of like fun, focused, deep work with people that I love on things that I love for decades. But it's not 12 hours a day, full stop, working and being in the trenches. And it's not 2 hours a day working on some light things and not really making progress. Okay, so to find your limit, you can sometimes go to burnout and really understand, okay, I can work 8 hours and then I get these physical symptoms. I can work 8 weeks and then it gets worse. So you can understand yourself, you can start to find your limit, okay? But don't go too far. And I want to tell you about the two approaches to work. The first one is a cow. It's consistent in long hours. It's steady and predictable output. It's showing up regularly, regardless of energy. It often leads to burnout and diminishing returns, and society rewards this model for discipline even when the results are mediocre. So this is how most people work, and this is why most people are burned out. The second kind of model is like a lion, right? So imagine a lion in the wild. A lion doesn't work 8 hours a day. It listens to its intuition, its body, and it then goes on a hunt to kill the gazelle, right? So imagine here's like some kind of grass, like a savanna, and there's a lion in the grass. And it's not really doing anything besides waiting all day long until it finds the perfect opportunity to like attack this zebra or whatever, right? So this is just like an animal. So the cow is working every single day. on low, important, like non-leverage tasks. It's constantly like eating the grass, showing up when it doesn't want to. But the lion is preparing itself for like 2, 3 hours, and then it sprints for like 5 minutes, kills the animal, gets the food, and is done for the day, and then it rests. That's how we want to work. Okay? So the lion has intense bursts of focused high energy work, long periods of rest and recovery between the hunts, and it works according to energy and creativity cycles. It prioritizes impact over numbers or hours logged, and it aims for leverage where results aren't tied to time. And here's why the lion beats a cow. You are biologically and neurologically designed to pursue novelty and rewards. So you listen to things and you pay attention to things that are curiosity inducing, that are fun to you, and they give you some kind of reward and dopamine, right? So oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. And the brain releases these dopamines when you discover something or solve something. And that doesn't happen when you're working 8 hours a day. Your brain is focused on a very specific task. This only happens when you're reflecting, you're taking rest, and then you're hunting and working for as fast and as good as possible for a few hours, and then you return back to rest. Okay? Because the guilt you feel for not grinding 8 hours a day, it's cultural conditioning. It's not your biological truth. I will give you a few examples on this later, but everyone online says you have to work 8 to 12 hours a day as a young man. You have to neglect your own body, your own intuition, your own soul for making more money. You have to neglect your friendships. You have to become financial free. Even though I agree with the general message that you should become an entrepreneur, you should work for yourself, you should become rich and retire your family and do something good for the world, I hardly disagree with pushing yourself beyond your limits and selling your soul, your intuition, your body, your mental state for more money. It's just not worth it, and I've been there. And if you could disagree with me right now, you'll probably realize in a couple of years that the relationships, the health, your body, your soul, your intuition, your inner guidance is the most important thing that you have. And you shouldn't betray that for more money. You shouldn't betray yourself for more money. So I started working like a lion instead of a cow. Instead of waking up every morning, sitting at my desk and working on some shallow, low maintenance weed test just so I can say that I work 8 hours a day, I started figuring out with clarity exactly what I need to work on, then with curiosity, making it super fun, and then with purpose, tying it to a bigger mission so I actually stick to it. The first step is clarity. You need to know exactly what you're aiming for, because without a clear-cut target, your brain resists the commitment. So design your dream life today, not someday. Ask yourself, what would I do if I had 85 million in the bank? How would I work? When would I wake up? Who would I be with? And what would I do with my time, money, and approval were in constraints? And no, you don't need more money. You don't need more time. It's bullshit. I wrote down my dream daily routine and realized that 90% of the things that I wrote down I can literally do right now. It's all simple, like reading, yoga, working, spending time with friends and family, eating good food, going to the gym. It doesn't cost much. And I design my life around that instead of waiting for some future. Because most people delay happiness for some future version of uncertain happiness. You say, I will work now, I will be unhappy now, and unfulfilled now, and grind now. So I delay my happiness into the future. But it doesn't work like that. Because when you reach your goals, you think you will be happy, but then you just set the goalpost to another goal. It's called hedonic adaptation. You just set one goal after another. And you've already achieved goals that you said would make you happy. But you're not happy. So it's a lie. You just stop waiting and start living now. That is the biggest mistake of our history, of human mankind, of delaying life. So write down, what would I do right now if I truly believed it would work? And now we need curiosity, because when you just have a goal but you're not interested in it, your heart and soul is not into it, you don't release the good chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin to actually make the work fun, because your brain wants to explore. Okay? So list 10 to 20 things that you're curious about. If you can't list 10, list 4. So you can check your search history, your history books, YouTube history, conversations, anything that you're interested about. You literally leave like a digital footprint behind. And you can look at that and understand what you actually like. I mostly watch content about psychology, spirituality, business, and gym. Those are my interests. Okay? And you need to spot the pattern. So what topics are pulling you in? You can also like draw this in circles, right? So you create 4 circles and you write on like gym, business, spirituality, and psychology. And then you have the overlap in the middle. So you want to try to find something that overlaps these 4 interests. okay? And for me, that's exactly what I'm doing right now, creating content about business and like not really business, but mostly about anxiety, which is satisfying my curiosity about psychology and anxiety. As a business, so satisfying my curiosity about business, I can tie spirituality into anxiety recovery and the gym as well, with like eating clean, having a good diet, reducing inflammation, all of that. Okay. And next up is the purpose, the craving. So you tie your passion to a meaningful cause. When you align your work with something that solves a real problem, oxytocin kicks in. And this is a chemical for meaning. Okay. So it fuels your resistance and focus. And when the goal becomes bigger than you want to show up for it. So identify a problem you've already overcome, like anxiety, loneliness, isolation, porn addiction, eating junk food, and ask, who else suffers from this? What would I tell my past self? And you build your work around solving that for others. When you do that, you have a curiosity, you have a craving, and you have clarity. And that's how you can work like a lion. You then just work like 2 to 4 hours a day on one specific task, for one specific purpose, for one specific person, for one specific problem. And that is powerful. But next, we want to also reframe rest, because a lot of people feel super guilty for not resting, right? Society told you need to grind for 10 hours a day. But if you look at the top thinkers, the greatest psychologists, biologists of our time, like Darwin, Einstein, Steve Jobs, they worked 2 to 5 hours of focused work and then rested. That is a big difference to what you hear online, grinding 12 hours a day. Because they understood that resting isn't a weakness. It's a strategic tool to make your work even better. Okay? So you need to design a system to work and rest. And in Greek, leisure actually meant time for thinking and growth, not laziness. It literally was a word for school, right? So leisure meant creativity, fun, learning. And deep rest, like walking, journaling, and music, activates the default mode network, DMN. And that's responsible for insight and creativity. Because when you're very focused on one task, your brain is just focused on one task, and you're basically activating your conscious brain, and you're thinking a lot, right? So you have a very narrow vision. But when you actually rest and you have good high quality rest, your subconscious mind takes over and you expand your mind, you expand your focus, and you can focus on other things, and your mind takes care of the ideas and the solutions to problems. That's why all of the greatest thinkers didn't have the greatest insights when they were working. They had it while their default mode network was active and they took a walk or they did something lightly stimulating. Okay? Because breakthroughs come after you stop thinking. So you have a mental recovery zone, right? Which is zero multitasking, zero guilt, and full disconnection after deep work, and that's where you want to get to. Okay? So here's my work cycle that I use to stay in the cycle. I have input. Usually this is in the morning. I learn deeply, I read books, I reflect and absorb ideas, I write stuff down, I journal about myself. This gives me the raw material to then create videos, help my coaching clients, and create courses and new coaching sessions and live videos. Then I have my output, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. I write, I coach, I solve, I create, and scripts during a distraction-free time. And this is where I apply what I've learned during my input phase. And after that, I disconnect. I step away, I go for walks, I rest, I go to the gym, I speak to other people. Today I'm going to the beach with my girlfriend, and that's when my subconscious does its best work. It's connecting the dots, it's reflecting on the ideas, and it's giving me more ideas to then input things into my brain. So the input phase takes like usually like 4 to 6 hours a day. The working phase itself takes like 2 to 4 hours. And the disconnection phase is the rest of the day. And that's how I never burn out again. If you need help applying this process, click on the first link in the description to book a free coaching call with me right now, and I will help you directly.